Nothing happened, Alexander said into 6 microphones. Cameras flashed across the museum steps. Rain glazed the cars at the curb, and reporters crowded the microphones. Alexander still wore his charcoal tuxedo jacket. I stood beside him in a deep red gown, cold air against one bare shoulder. Then something small struck the stone between us. My gold earring bounced once, rolled through a wash of camera light, and stopped against the toe of his shoe. Questions broke over us. Mr. Walker, why was that in your pocket? Lumi, did you meet him in private? Did you use a personal relationship to influence the legal review? Behind the press line, Vanessa Crane watched without surprise. Only Alexander and I knew where the clasp had broken, why he had kept the earring, and what he had asked me in the glass gallery afterward. He looked at me. The next sentence would decide whether he was protecting my name or erasing me to save his own. Earlier that evening, the Halston Museum had looked incapable of scandal. Gold light filled the glass atrium. A quartet played beneath a suspended sculpture made of hundreds of thin brass leaves. Donors in black tie moved between display cases with champagne in their hands and certainty in their voices. Beyond them, museum staff guided guests toward the auction hall, where donated works would be sold to fund the Halston's new education wing. I had been hired to keep that ambition from becoming a lawsuit. My contract called me an independent provenance consultant. In practice, I asked uncomfortable questions before expensive people made irreversible decisions. I checked ownership histories, export permits, restoration records, and the quiet gaps that appeared when everyone wanted an object to be legitimate more than they wanted to know whether it was. At 26, I was used to being mistaken for an assistant. I had learned not to correct people too quickly. Sometimes they revealed more when they believed I had no authority. "Your badge is backward," Marichin said as she joined me near the atrium doors. Mara was the museum's curator of modern collections and the person who had brought me onto the project. She wore a midnight blue gown with narrow sleeves and the expression of a woman managing 6 emergencies without allowing any of them to see her panic. I turned the badge around. The mirrored doors caught my reflection, chestnut waves over one shoulder, warm brown eyes more alert than the room required. "Better? You still look like you're about to cross-examine the champagne." "The champagne has no paperwork. That makes it the safest object in the building." Her gaze dropped to the folder under my arm. "Tell me you're finished." "I'm finished enough to be worried." "That is not the answer I asked for." I opened the catalog to lot 27. The Del Mar bronze was photographed with a different inventory mark in 1992. Mara's smile disappeared. "Different how?" "Different number. Different format. The export certificate attached to tonight's lot may belong to another object." The quartet moved into a slower piece. Around us, no one noticed that the centerpiece of the auction might be legally unsellable. "Does Miriam know?" Mara asked. "I sent her the photographs 10 minutes ago." "And legal?" A man answered behind me. "Legal knows now." I turned. Alexander Walker stood close enough to have heard every word. In a room designed to display wealth, he looked almost severe. His tuxedo was charcoal instead of black, the only visible rebellion in an otherwise exact appearance. His shirt was crisp, his cufflinks plain silver, his bow tie perfectly centered. He held no drink. At 34, Alexander was one of the city's most formidable corporate attorneys. He represented the Crane Foundation, the Halston's partner in the Education Wing project. The foundation was also one of the largest new clients his firm had won in years, and everyone knew the account had become part of the case for making him an equity partner. I had met him 3 times in conference rooms. He had disagreed with me in all 3. Not carelessly. Alexander listened, asked precise questions, then pressed until he found the weakest point. He never raised his voice or used 10 words where 6 would do. When he said, "I understand your concern," it usually meant he was about to explain why everyone else had decided to live with it. Now he looked from the catalog to my face. "You found something," he said. It was not a question. "I found two objects pretending to be one." Mara muttered under her breath and hurried toward the director's office. Alexander held out his hand for the catalog. I gave it to him. He studied the marked page. The transfer agreement cites the 1989 inventory. The bronze upstairs carries a later accession code under the base. Could the mark have been replaced during restoration? Possibly. Could the photograph be mislabeled? Possibly. Can you prove either before the lot is called? No. His eyes lifted. Then you want to stop a sale on uncertainty. I want to stop it because the certainty belongs to the wrong object. The corner of his mouth moved. Do you always speak like that? Only when lawyers ask the same question 3 ways. People change their answers. I don't. I noticed. Across the atrium, Miriam Cole raised one hand and signaled urgently. Alexander offered me his arm, not as a command but as a question. We have 8 minutes, he said. Let's keep the museum from selling its most generous problem. I did not take his arm. But I walked beside him. Miriam listened to my explanation in a service alcove behind the auction hall, her face losing color as I showed her the photographs. The Halston's director was a compact woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and the permanently alert expression of someone responsible for a building full of irreplaceable things. Through the narrow door behind her, we could hear the auctioneer welcoming the room. You're certain? She asked. I'm certain the records do not match the object, I said. I'm not certain why. Miriam looked at Alexander. Legally? Withdraw the lot pending review, he said. Do not imply wrongdoing. Call it a cataloging discrepancy. The donor will threaten to pull the pledge. He may. And Vanessa? Will threaten more elegantly. Miriam pressed 2 fingers to her temple. If I stop the sale, the board will say I panicked. If you don't, I said, someone may later say you knew. Miriam looked at me for a long second, then nodded. Do it quietly. I went straight to the registrar's table, asked for the lot card, and wrote the withdrawal code across the back. The junior registrar stared at me. Ms. Crane approved the final list, he whispered. Miriam approved the withdrawal. He still hesitated. So I took the card myself and carried it to the auctioneer. The first 26 lots moved quickly. Champagne flowed. Numbers climbed. The room settled into the pleasurable rhythm of wealth congratulating itself. When lot 27 should have appeared on the screen, the auctioneer paused. Due to a last-minute cataloging review, he announced, the next object has been withdrawn. Whispers moved through the room. A donor turned sharply. Vanessa Crane lifted her head. She found me before the replacement lot was introduced. Vanessa wore a silver gown that caught every light without seeming bright. An influential board member and the foundation founder's daughter, she had spent years making pressure feel like good manners. What did you do? She asked. I stopped an object with mismatched documentation. You stopped the centerpiece of the Delmar gift. I stopped one lot. You may have stopped the education wing. Alexander stepped beside us without moving in front of me. I noticed the choice. The withdrawal was necessary, he said. Vanessa looked at him. According to whom? According to the records. Her eyes returned to me. Records can be reviewed after midnight. Ownership cannot be repaired after a public sale, I said. Her composure thinned for a second. Then the donor whose pledge anchored the evening approached with 2 board members. Vanessa changed before he reached us. Her expression warmed. Her shoulders relaxed. There was a routine catalog issue, she told him. Nothing that affects the larger partnership. He looked past her toward me. You're the consultant who pulled it? Yes. Did you have to? Everyone waited. I could have made the answer easier. I could have called it caution, procedure, or an abundance of care. Yes, I said. The donor's jaw tightened. Then I'll review my pledge in the morning. He walked away. Vanessa watched $40 million cross the floor without her. You are a temporary consultant, she said quietly. You will leave. The people who work here will live with what you just did. I know that. Do you? Her voice stayed controlled, but the anger beneath it was no longer abstract. The education wing is not a plaque with my family's name on it. It means school programs, conservation apprenticeships, and 40 permanent jobs. If the donor walks, those people pay for your certainty. I looked at the auction doors. And if the museum sells an object it cannot lawfully own, those same people inherit the investigation. I am not pretending the choice is painless. Vanessa studied me, perhaps checking whether I understood the weight she had placed in my hands. I understand it, I said. I am still stopping the sale. Alexander drew a breath beside me, but Vanessa did not look at him. The press will hear she endangered the wing, she said. If they also decide she had private access to counsel, every correct decision she made tonight will look purchased. There has been no private access, Alexander said. Then keep it that way. She left us beneath the brass leaf sculpture, her silver gown breaking into fragments in the mirrored wall. Alexander watched her go. You could have softened your answer to the donor. He asked whether I had to stop the sale. You could have explained. He did not want an explanation. Alexander looked at me more carefully than before. I'm beginning to understand why Miriam hired you. I'm beginning to understand why Vanessa wants me gone. She wants uncertainty gone. And you? His gaze dropped to the folder in my hand, then returned to my face. I bill by the hour, he said. Uncertainty has been good to me. I smiled despite myself. A few minutes later, I followed him into the private corridor. The corridor behind the auction hall was narrow, white, and too brightly lit for romance. Metal doors led to conservation rooms. A rolling rack of empty frames stood against one wall. Somewhere beyond it, staff members moved crates and spoke in the clipped whispers of people trying not to disturb rich guests. Alexander had received a message from the registrar. The bronze's underside had been photographed again, and the image was waiting on a secure terminal. I can look at it alone, I said. I know. Then why are you coming? Because if you're right, I need to advise the foundation before Vanessa advises it for me. That almost sounded honest. He opened the conservation office door. I am capable of honesty. Under supervision? He gave me a brief look and let me pass. The terminal showed the new photograph in severe detail. I enlarged the accession mark and placed it beside the archived image. Alexander leaned over my shoulder, close enough that I could feel his warmth without being touched. The second digit is different, he said. And the tool marks around the plate are fresh. So the plate may have been replaced. Or the entire bronze was substituted before export. He straightened. If the donated bronze was not the object described in the records, then the museum had not made a simple cataloging mistake. It might have accepted something removed from another country without lawful permission. The foundation agreement required the Halston to maintain reliable due diligence systems. Vanessa's celebrated partnership could collapse before it was announced. Alexander took out his phone. Who are you calling? My office. To control the damage? To preserve the evidence. I looked at him. He met my gaze. You sound surprised. I'm revising an opinion, Of my ethics? Of your priorities. He made the call. In less than 2 minutes, he instructed an associate to freeze every version of the transfer file, preserve messages, and notify no one outside a named group. There was no drama in his voice. That made the authority in it more obvious. When he finished, a staff member pushed through the corridor door with a garment rack. One wheel caught the carpet, and the metal frame swung toward me. Alexander's hand closed around my waist and moved me into the shallow recess beside the office. My palm landed against his chest. His other hand braced beside my shoulder. The rack rattled past, followed by a hurried apology. Alexander did not let go immediately. Neither did I step away. Up close, the control in his face looked less effortless. A pulse moved once at the base of his throat. His hand stayed firm at my waist but still, waiting for me to decide what happened next. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes." His gaze shifted to my left ear. "Hold still." I lifted an eyebrow. "Your earring is caught on my lapel." The gold drop had snagged against the edge of his jacket. One strand of my chestnut brown hair was wrapped around the clasp. "May I?" he asked. "Yes." He released my waist first. Then he raised both hands carefully, one holding the earring steady while the other freed my hair. His fingers did not touch my skin, but the space between his knuckles and my neck felt more intimate than contact would have. The clasp gave way. The earring dropped into his palm. "Broken," he said. "It belonged to my mother." His expression changed. "I'm sorry." "You didn't break it." "I was involved." "She wore them whenever she had to do something she was afraid of," I said. "I started doing the same after she died." He looked at the small gold curve in his hand more carefully. I opened my clutch, but it was barely large enough for my phone and badge. The lining had already pulled loose at one corner. "I'll keep it safe," he said. "I can manage a piece of jewelry." "You have an argument disguised as a handbag." I should have insisted. Instead, I watched him slip the earring into the inside pocket of his tuxedo jacket. "Do not lose that." "I won't." He held my gaze a moment longer than the answer required. For a second, neither of us moved. "Lumi," he said. My name sounded different in his voice than it had in conference rooms. There was no professional purpose in it. A door opened at the end of the corridor. We stepped apart before Vanessa appeared. Her gaze moved from my face to Alexander's open jacket, then to the conservation image on the monitor. "I see the private review has begun," she said. "It's an evidence review," I replied. "Of course." She entered the office and studied the enlarged photograph. Her expression remained smooth, but her fingers tightened around her silver clutch. "The Donors' Council is asking why the lot was withdrawn," she said. "Alexander, you will tell him the discrepancy is administrative." "I'll tell him the review is ongoing." "That answer may cost us the pledge." "The wrong answer may cost more." Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to me. "You have made your point. Go back to the gala." "I'm still working." "Your work is finished for tonight." "No," Alexander said. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. "Excuse me?" Lumi found the discrepancy. "She stays until the preservation steps are complete." It was the first time that evening he had opposed Vanessa without hiding the disagreement inside procedure. "Then keep the door open," she said. "People are already asking why counsel disappeared with the consultant." She left it open herself. Alexander watched her walk away. "You should have let me answer," I said. "You were about to." "I still am." He looked at me, and for the first time the formidable attorney seemed unsure what to say. "I believe you," he said. By the time we returned to the atrium, the auction had ended and the gala had shifted into damage control elegance. The quartet was playing again. Servers moved through the crowd with fresh trays. The donor who had threatened to reconsider his pledge was surrounded by board members pretending not to negotiate. Miriam stood near the staircase, speaking to two reporters with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Mara found me beside the coat check. Please tell me you have good news. I have preserved evidence. That is lawyer language for no. It means no one can quietly replace the file tomorrow. She followed my glance toward Alexander. Did he help? Yes. Mara waited. What? You sound surprised. I am. Before she could say more, Miriam approached. The donor is staying for the final program, she said. Vanessa convinced him that leaving would attract attention. That buys us time, I said. It also buys us photographers. They've heard something happened with the bronze. Alexander joined us. Give them one clean fact. The lot was withdrawn for review. Miriam nodded. The quartet is about to open the dance floor. The donor wants the foundation team visible, smiling, and nowhere near a closed door. Vanessa was already walking toward him from the other side of the atrium. Alexander looked at me. I need to ask you a question where she cannot hear the answer. You have an office. And she has learned to appear in it. The quartet began a waltz. He held out his hand. One dance. We discussed the report, and you may step on my shoes if I become unbearable. I looked at Vanessa, then at the reporters near the entrance. This is a bad idea, I said. Most useful ideas tonight have been. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine with measured pressure. He placed his other hand at my waist, exactly where it had been in the corridor and somehow less innocent now that neither of us could blame a garment rack. Can you dance? I asked. I can avoid public injury for approximately 4 minutes. That is not confidence. It is a warranty. He guided me into the movement of the room. Alexander danced the way he argued, without wasted motion. He did not pull me too close. He did not need to. The distance he kept made me aware of every inch. What did you need to ask? I said. If the bronze is wrong, what happens next? The museum reports it, the donor explains the chain of custody, and an outside authority decides what belongs where. And the education wing? May be delayed. People may lose jobs. Yes. He studied my face. You say that calmly. I have thought about it. Calm is not the same as careless. He turned me beneath the brass leaves. Warm light moved over his face. I spent 3 months keeping this agreement alive, he said. You threatened it in 5 minutes. I stopped it from becoming worse. I agree. The words caught me off guard more than an argument would have. He continued, quieter. And I have spent the last hour trying not to notice that I want to be wherever you are causing the next problem. I looked over his shoulder at the donors, the cameras, Vanessa's silver silhouette. Be careful, I said. With what? Do not say something tonight that you will deny tomorrow. His jaw shifted. You think I would? I think you are very good at choosing the sentence that leaves you an exit. The music slowed. He brought us to a stop near the dark entrance of the sculpture gallery. Walk with me, he said. That is another closed room. The gallery has glass walls. So the misunderstanding will have better lighting? A brief smile appeared. 5 minutes. You can leave whenever you want. The sculpture gallery was closed to guests, but the lights remained on. Through the glass, we could see the gala. Inside, bronze figures stood on pale platforms, their shadows long across the floor. Alexander kept a respectful distance as we walked. Vanessa believes responsibility means preserving the institution, he said. Even if preserving it requires a false statement? She would call it timing. What would you call it? His reflection in the glass faced mine. Before tonight, I might have called it strategy. And now? He stopped beside a sculpture of two hands almost touching. Now I am less certain. For once, he did not improve the answer. He stepped closer. His hand lifted, then stopped near my face. Your hair, he said. I waited. It isn't caught. The air changed. His fingers remained a few inches from my cheek. His gaze dropped to my mouth and returned to my eyes. May I kiss you? He asked. Every part of me understood the temptation in that question. Alexander controlled every public word. Asking me directly was the first risk I had seen him take without a legal reason. I wanted to say yes. Instead, I placed two fingers against his wrist and lowered his hand. Not tonight. He did not move closer. Why? Because you still treat every feeling like something that can be contained. He absorbed that. When you know what you are willing to say outside this room, I added, ask me again. The announcement chime sounded in the atrium. We stepped apart. As we returned to the gala, Alexander's jacket pocket still held my earring. Vanessa noticed the missing gold at my left ear before either of us remembered it. The midnight announcement never happened. 5 minutes before the board was supposed to enter the atrium, Miriam received a message from the donor's attorney. The pledge would remain in place only if the museum stated publicly that the withdrawal had been routine and unrelated to any legal concern. That statement was impossible. The board moved the announcement to 9 the next morning and sent staff to tell guests that additional due diligence demonstrated institutional strength. Most accepted the explanation because their cars were waiting and none of their names were on the paperwork. The reporters did not leave. They gathered beneath the museum awning while rain began to fall, asking why the foundation's lead counsel and the provenance consultant had disappeared together before the centerpiece lot was withdrawn. I was in the cloakroom when Mara showed me the first photograph on her phone. It had been taken through the glass wall of the sculpture gallery. Alexander stood close to me, his hand lifted near my face. The angle erased the space between us. The caption asked whether the Halston's consultant had received private legal guidance before stopping the sale. That was fast, Mara said. It was waiting. You think Vanessa sent it? I think she knew exactly which photograph would make my report look personal. Across the atrium, Vanessa guided Alexander into the trustees' salon and closed the door. Mara touched my arm. What happened in the gallery? He asked if he could kiss me. Her eyes widened. And? I said no. That photograph does not look like no. It does if anyone asks me. Mara lowered the phone. I am asking. I know. Sorry. Through the salon door, Vanessa's voice rose just enough to reach us. If you allow them to make this personal, Lumi's report becomes contaminated. Alexander answered too quietly for me to hear. Vanessa continued. The donor will say she pulled the lot to create leverage. The board will say you gave her private access. Your firm will lose the Crane account. Your partnership vote will be postponed. All for a moment that did not even happen. The door opened. Vanessa came out first. Her expression was composed again. She looked at my bare left ear, then at Alexander's jacket. Reporters are waiting, she said. We give them one answer. The lot was withdrawn for independent review. Alexander had no personal involvement with Lumi. Nothing happened. Alexander stepped into the atrium behind her. His face was unreadable. You do not have to discuss me, I told him. Yes, he does, Vanessa said. Silence confirms the photograph. I was speaking to him. And I am trying to prevent your work from being dismissed as a favor. You leaked a photograph and now you are offering to protect me from it. Vanessa's eyes cooled. I am protecting the education wing, the museum, and the people who will still be here when your contract ends. Alexander looked at me. The trap was effective because part of it was true. If he admitted attraction, every fact I had raised could be recast as influence. If he denied it, the foundation might survive the morning. So might his partnership vote. We stepped outside before anyone resolved the choice. The rain had thinned to mist. Museum security held the press behind a velvet line at the bottom of the steps. Camera lights burned against the wet dark. Miriam delivered the prepared statement first. The bronze had been withdrawn due to a documentation discrepancy. The museum would conduct an independent review. The larger partnership announcement had been postponed until morning. Then the questions turned. Mr. Walker, were you alone with Lumi before the lot was pulled? Yes, Alexander said. We reviewed evidence in a conservation corridor. Vanessa's head turned slightly. Did you meet privately in the sculpture gallery? We spoke there. Are you in a relationship? Alexander's face changed by almost nothing. Nothing happened, he said. The microphones moved closer. A reporter called, then why does the photograph show you about to kiss her? It shows an incomplete moment. Did she use a personal relationship to influence your legal advice? No. That answer should have been enough. Then he added, Lumi had no private access to me before tonight, and she will have no role in the Foundation's legal decisions. Any suggestion that intimacy affected my advice is false. The words were careful. They protected the report and left no place for what had happened between us. A reporter asked, so the evening meant nothing? Alexander's jaw tightened. Nothing happened, he repeated. Then my earring fell from his pocket. It struck the stone between us and rolled into the light. For 1 second, no one spoke. Then the steps erupted. Mr. Walker, why were you carrying her jewelry? Lumi, did you give it to him? Where were you when it came off? Alexander looked down at the earring as if it were the one fact he had forgotten to control. Vanessa moved closer. Explain the clasp, she said under her breath. He bent, picked up the earring, and closed it in his hand. The clasp broke in the service corridor, he said. I was keeping it safe. Were you touching her? I moved her out of the path of a garment rack. Did anything romantic happen? No. His answer was technically accurate. The kiss had been requested, not given. A gust of wet air moved across the steps. Alexander looked at my bare shoulders, took off his jacket, and placed it around me. The gesture was instinctive. The timing made it worse. The reporter nearest me raised her microphone. Lumi, do you believe nothing happened? Alexander looked at me. I slipped his jacket from my shoulders, folded it once, and placed it over his arm. Something happened, I said. He decided only the convenient part of the truth belonged in public. The cameras flashed so brightly I lost his face in the white. I walked down the museum steps alone. Mara caught me at the side entrance. Your car is coming, she said. I'm not leaving. You just walked away from 30 cameras. I walked away from him. My report is due at 8. The museum's administrative wing was nearly empty. I changed from heels into the flat shoes I kept beneath my desk, pinned back my damp hair, and opened the evidence file while the gala disappeared floor by floor around me. By 2 in the morning, I had documented the mismatched inventory marks, the altered plate, the broken chain of custody, and every person notified before the withdrawal. I included the corridor meeting with Alexander because leaving it out would make Vanessa's accusation easier to use. I described the photograph. I described the earring. I wrote that no romantic or physical relationship had influenced my decision. Then I added one final recommendation: Crane Foundation Counsel should be recused from the review because the public controversy had compromised the appearance of independence. The sentence hurt. I left it in. At 3:15, the office door opened. Alexander stood there without his bow tie. His shirt collar was open, and the charcoal jacket hung over one arm. He looked tired, but not careless. Mara rose from the chair beside me. "I'll find coffee," she said. "You hate coffee." "I am expanding my range." She left. Alexander placed my earring on the desk. Beside it, he set a tiny clear safety back in a paper envelope. "The registrar could not repair the clasp tonight," he said. "She found a temporary backing. It will hold if someone is careful." I looked at the envelope, then at him. "Thank you. I should have returned it before we went outside." "Yes. I should have answered differently." I closed the report folder. "You answered the allegation. Then you kept talking until I disappeared from the story. I thought distance would protect your work. It made me sound like a professional stranger who imagined the rest." He gripped the back of the empty chair but did not sit. "I made the wrong choice." "You made the choice you always make. You found the wording that preserved the most." His eyes dropped to the report on my desk. "You are recommending my recusal?" "Yes. You are right. Do not agree just to make this easier." "I am not trying to make it easier." "Then why are you here?" He looked at the earring. "Because I wanted to kiss you," he said. "I still do. And I let people make that sound like something you invented." The office went quiet except for rain against the narrow window. "You do not get to tell me privately what you were unwilling to own outside." "I understand." "Do you?" His answer took longer this time. "I am beginning to." "If you report the conflict tonight," I said, "your firm may remove the Crane account before the partnership vote." "They may." "Then do not make that call as a grand gesture for me. Make it because you cannot oversee a review you have already helped turn into a public argument." He looked toward the dark window. "You still think I am searching for an exit? I think you have spent years making sure one exists." This time he did not defend himself. I slid the earring and the temporary backing into my clutch. "The board announcement begins at 9, he said. "My report will be delivered at 8. Vanessa plans to announce the partnership anyway. Then the board can explain why it ignored the consultant who stopped the sale. She will say the discrepancy is unresolved." "It is unresolved. That is the reason to pause." He nodded once. "Will you be there?" he asked. "I am still the consultant." "That was not what I meant." "I know what you meant." I stood, took the report folder, and walked past him. At the doorway, I stopped. "You called me a variable tonight." "I remember. I am not something you remove so the rest of your life stays orderly." His face changed, but he did not answer quickly enough to make the moment neat. I left him there. As I crossed the administrative corridor, I heard him take out his phone. "Daniel," he said when someone answered. His voice had returned to the controlled tone he used for serious calls. "I need to report a conflict and submit my withdrawal from the Crane matter tonight." "No, do not wait until the morning meeting." I kept walking. At 8:55, the Halston atrium was brighter than it had been the night before and far less forgiving. Morning light poured through the glass roof. The brass leaves above the stage no longer glowed, they looked sharp. Board members occupied the first rows. Reporters filled the back. The donor sat beside Vanessa with his attorneys behind him. I had delivered my report to Miriam at 8. At 8:40, she told the board the review could not be completed on their preferred schedule. At 8:50, Mara examined the temporary backing beside me. "One careful use," she said. "Do not dance in it." At 8:52, Alexander entered the atrium. He had retied his bow tie, but the rest of him looked altered. He carried his leather case in one hand and a sealed recusal letter in the other. Vanessa intercepted him near the first row. "Your managing partner called my father," she said. "The Crane account has been reassigned." Alexander said nothing. "And your partnership vote has been removed from today's agenda." I was informed. "You did this before the board met?" "Yes." For the first time, Vanessa looked less angry than stunned. Then she turned away from him, walked to the stage, and took the microphone. "Last night's catalog discrepancy demonstrates the value of strong institutional partnership," she began. "The Crane Foundation and the Halston Museum remain committed to the Education Wing project, and we expect the independent review to allow the agreement to proceed." Applause started uncertainly. Alexander rose from the aisle before she could continue. He walked to the stage, handed Miriam the sealed letter, and asked for the microphone. "This announcement should not proceed on that assumption," he said. The applause stopped. Vanessa stepped toward him. "This is not the time. It became the time when my statement last night created a false impression about Lumi." He faced the board and the cameras. "Lumi identified the documentation problem before she and I had any private conversation. She withdrew the lot on evidence, not on my advice. Her report should be reviewed by independent counsel, and I submitted my recusal at 4:07 this morning." Vanessa's voice was low. "You have already lost the account." "Yes." "And your partnership vote." "Yes." A murmur moved through the room. Alexander did not explain the corridor, the dance, or every second in the gallery. He looked at me once, then returned his attention to the room. "I also said that nothing happened. That was misleading. I was attracted to Lumi, and the photograph captured a private moment I initiated. She set a clear boundary, which I respected. My feelings did not influence her work, but my denial allowed people to question her integrity while I protected my position." Vanessa reached for the microphone. "You are turning a legal review into a personal spectacle." "No," he said. "I am correcting the part one made personal." He set the microphone on the podium and stepped away before Vanessa could answer. Miriam immediately called the board into emergency session. The donor's attorneys gathered around their client. A representative from Alexander's firm crossed the aisle. Alexander removed the Crane case file from his leather case and handed it over. The representative left without speaking to him. Alexander watched the file go. Then he moved to the side of the stage and waited. He did not come to me while I answered questions from outside counsel. He did not interrupt when Miriam asked me to explain the inventory discrepancy again. He waited until Mara had handed over the supporting photographs and the board had formally voted to suspend the partnership announcement. Only then did he stop several feet away. "I have no request you owe me," he said. "Good." The board paused the announcement. "Because of the evidence?" "Yes." He accepted the correction. Reporters crowded behind the security line near the doors. The museum steps beyond them were washed clean by the night's rain. I opened my clutch and took out the earring and its temporary backing. Alexander noticed the small envelope. "They found something that works?" "For one careful use." His gaze lifted to mine. "Walk me outside," I said. "With the cameras?" "With whoever is there." He offered his arm. This time, I took it. We crossed the atrium together. There was no announcement and no music, only our footsteps and the movement of reporters beyond the doors. At the top of the museum stairs, I stopped. Alexander turned toward me. I placed the earring and the clear backing in his palm, then gathered my wavy hair away from my left ear. "Would you?" I asked. He searched my face. "Are you sure?" "Yes." His fingers were steady as he fitted the temporary backing into place. The touch was brief, visible, and careful enough to feel like a promise he had not yet earned the right to make aloud. When he lowered his hand, camera shutters began below us. "Last night you asked me a question," I said. His expression changed. "I remember." "My answer is still not yet." He nodded. "All right. But you may ask me again when this review is over." For the first time since the earring fell, he smiled without checking who might see it. He held out his hand. I took it, and together we walked down the steps.